Oftentimes, Americans are inclined to believe that all Muslim people are either associated with or belong to a religious terrorist organization. When thinking of the Muslim population around the world, no one would come to think that Muslims in Saudi Arabia are more like Americans than terrorists. BuzzFeed released an article that negates the negative connotations and misrepresentations of Muslims that the American media portrays. This article features Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, an ISIS leader who attempts to gain followers by using Twitter. He tweets, "We urgently call upon every Muslim to join the fight, especially those in the land of the two shrines. Rise." Americans may believe that the use of social media would be a good way to recruit new people. However, the situation was much different. Instead of rising and joining the fight, many Muslims tweeted back at the leader jokingly, "I've got Star Wars on Sunday, maybe later. Can't, too busy fangirling One Direction. My dad said I need to be home by 8. Will we be done by then?" This BuzzFeed article is a great representation of how Muslim people are not all extremists who want to kill in the name of Islam. These tweets go to show the normality of Muslims who spend their days much like Americans would. Americans frequently think Muslims that practice Islam are untrustworthy and potential terrorists. These allegations come from the misconception of Islam as a religion. Islam was started in the 7th century in Mecca and follows the Prophet Muhammad. There are 5 pillars of faith that Muslims follow: Shahada, Salat, Zakat, Psalm, and Hajj. Hearing these words, you might think to yourself that one of these pillars could have to do with killing non-Muslims, but that's not true. These pillars are the best way for Muslims to show their dedication to Islam through testimony of faith, prayer, fasting, charity, and pilgrimage to Mecca. Much like the Ku Klux Klan deriving from Christianity, terrorist groups like ISIS have used their faith to create violence. But like the KKK does not define Christianity, ISIS does not define Islam. The portrayal of Muslims in American media has created an ideology that Muslims living in our country are dangerous people we should question and be skeptical of. With the investigation of unfair misrepresentations of Muslims in American media, along with the juxtaposition of how Muslims in Saudi Arabia also do not identify with extremist beliefs, we hope to debunk the idea that in both countries the words ISIS and Muslim do not always go hand in hand.
Since the terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, America has been guilty of generalizing the entire population of Muslim people. The popular belief among many is that Muslims are associated with terrorism or are followers to an extremist group. After 9/11 and still to this day, America is vulnerable and looking for someone to blame. The American people have a tendency to scapegoat the Muslim population, as it is easier to target a large group of people than the exact group responsible. Scapegoating can be defined as placing the blame for a bad effect on a person or group of people who are not really responsible but provide an easy target for animosity. The Muslim population is victim of this circumstance as they take the blame for terror. In hopes to understand a Muslim perspective, we explore 2 news articles that recognize the overgeneralization issue and give perspective on misrepresentation that still exist in American news media. Our first article, entitled "I Am You, American Muslims on Faith and Fear." Jareen Anam explores and interviews Muslims to find out how difficult it is to practice their faith in a country they love. The article explains how in this heated time of terrorism, Muslim Americans have been put under a microscope. The author first interviews Aliyah Sharif, a black Muslim hip-hop artist having to face Islamophobia. She tries to reclaim the American Muslim narrative through her music, highlighting the good things they do for this country. For example, fundraising $50,000 to rebuild burned African-American churches. Although she fights the prejudice, it is like taking 15 steps backward every time an attack is placed in the name of Islam. She explains after the attacks in San Bernardino, she heard comments like, "All you Muslims are dangerous," to which she responded, "Hey, I come in peace. We don't all believe in that stuff." Madiha Khan was also interviewed, a medical graduate student at Liberty University, a strict Christian school. Khan said she connected with the school as she felt their religious beliefs and social etiquette lined up well with her Muslim beliefs. When students ask her questions about Islam, she finds that usually there are more similarities than differences. She also comments on the San Bernardino attack, stating, "When I heard about the attacks, the first thing I thought was, please don't let them be Muslim." She said it is sad to say, but she feels helpless, feeling her culture is continuously misconstrued in the media. Soon after, her president gave a speech at a weekly convocation stating, "If more good people had conceal and carry permits, then we could end those Muslims before they walk in the door." Ibrahim Hooper, director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, told CNN that it is comments like these that discriminate against American Muslims and create an overall toxic anti-Muslim atmosphere. Madiha got a call from her parents afterward, got out, telling her not to walk alone at night, but the president's words did not stop her from educating students on campus about what it really means to be Muslim. In another article, Islamophobia, U.S. Cities Face Anti-Muslim Backlash, written by Mike James and Linda Dono, focuses on how the negativity in the media directly influences the safety and well-being of American Muslim citizens. It explains that after a terror attack, social media, public forums, and even mainstream political rhetoric from the presidential candidates direct suspicion toward Muslim groups. As an example, a popular social media site, Yik Yak, stated, "There are Muslims at Princeton who are radical and would therefore condone yesterday's attacks." Muslim communities in the U.S. face opposition more in the form of rhetoric than actual violence. Politicians have mainstreamed this Islamophobia through the use of news and popular television. Children at schools pull on girls' hijabs and ask the boys if they have bombs in their backpacks. Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher states that the political candidates' responses in the wake of the Brussels attack were naive and unrealistic, that for them to play at people's basest fears to gain political support is contrary to American values.
After exploring the American portrayals of Muslims in the media, we wanted to look and see how people in Saudi Arabia feel about the extremist groups. They disassociate themselves from the Islamic State and work to arrest and protect their citizens. After analyzing multiple Saudi Arabian news sources, we discovered the prominent anti-terrorism viewpoint of the Muslim citizens living there. These viewpoints contradict the mainstream belief in American media that Muslims are people to be suspicious of and fear. Not only are American Muslims victims of misrepresentation, but so are Muslims who live in the heart of the Middle East. We now look to Arab News, a popular online news outlet for current events in Saudi Arabia. In the first article, IS behind Al-Aqsa attack, the reporter explains how 4 men who have links to the Islamic State terrorist group opened fire and killed 9 innocent civilians, people in Al-Aqsa, also leaving 13 injured. In response, the security forces carried out several operations in different parts of the country and arrested all the members of the terror organization. The people that they arrested includes those who pledged their loyalty to the commander of the terror organization, participants, and supporters. After their raids, security forces arrested 77 suspects and seized several weapons, documents, and electronic devices, hoping to gain intelligence from these ISIS supporters. After reading this article, it is evident that police forces in Saudi Arabia are working to arrest and shut down the ideas of this radical religion. This article helps to explain that not all Muslims represent ISIS. Even those living in close proximity can recognize negative associations with ISIS. In another article posted on Arab News, a reporter explains the recent video that was filmed and released of ISIS beheading 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians. He also explains other acts of violence like a pilot being burned alive in a cage. He says that these videos that are published are helping to recruit weak-minded Muslims and that the U.S. and other dominant countries must step in and help the Middle East contain this violence. U.S. President Barack Obama refuses to bomb Raqqa, the city capital of ISIS in northern Syria. Audrey Kurth Cronin, an American academic, explains the group attracts followers yearning for not only religious righteousness, but also adventure, personal power, and a sense of self and community. And additionally, some people just want to kill, and ISIS welcomes them too. The author encourages any anti-extremist interventions. He explains that non-radical Muslims are needed in advertising campaigns, radio, and social networks. He also thinks that economic aid should be given to poor Muslim countries. Doing this, as well as military actions against ISIS, he hopes that we will have a chance to one day win the battle against ISIS.
When looking at the research shown, it is easily seen that Muslims around the world suffer from the generalizations and misrepresentations in news media. News stations across America have scapegoated the Muslim population and, in turn, have put fear and skepticism in the minds of the American people. As heard in the American news articles, this has negatively affected the lives of many American Muslims who are living in peace. In Saudi Arabia, however, citizens work to stop the support of ISIS. With the generalizations of the American media, that fact might surprise the American public. The Saudi Arabian news sources show that most of the people of the country do not identify with ISIS. Using these sources, we have concluded that the organization ISIS does not define the Muslim people, and that through these generalizations we are hurting the majority population of peaceful practicing Muslims.